Welcome to Sound Test. My name is Brian, and this is Now Spinning, a series where we look through my record collection and talk about and review some of the albums I have in my collection. So today we're going to be looking at this. This is Nas's original album, Illmatic, but performed live with the National Symphony Orchestra from the Kennedy Center. And this is a very special album. I very much enjoy the combination of classical music with hip hop and how that like effortlessly and just really well done arrangement and organization to make this possible. So yeah, we're going to talk about this album. We're gonna look on the inside, see the inserts and things like that. And I very much like this package. This is definitely a must buy for hip hop vinyl heads. So, as I said, this album is Nas's first album, Illmatic. So, Illmatic is routinely referred to as one of the greatest albums of hip hop history. And Illmatic was done at a very young point of Nas's life. I believe he was like 17, 18 when he was creating this album or when it came out. So to go back and listen to Illmatic and just hear the things that his wordplay, his flow, and like his just hunger towards rap at that time, it is just phenomenal just to think that an adolescent really was able to do that. And so that album, again, has been constantly in hip hop circles as one of the greatest albums of all time. Well, on March 28th, 2014, he held a live concert in which he did all of the tracks from Illmatic, but he did it with a live orchestra. And I believe the results of that is very, very fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about the musical stuff, but first let's actually look at the album itself. So we have the original, young Nas picture on here. And in the back, you actually see music notation. And then on the actual back, you have this beautiful black and gold trim. So, I felt like this was a very premium kind of like style they wanted to go for, how this album looks and feels. And like, even with the gold lettering, it's imprinted. So you can actually feel the texture of the letters and, on the front, the actual gold lettering. So it's a very premium feeling package. So when it comes to this album, I actually didn't know it existed until I saw it as a record. I was at the local record store and that was close near me. And when I saw this, I thought it was just, like a 15th anniversary or whatever, 20th anniversary, whatever, repressing of Illmatic. But then when I actually looked on it and I was like, oh, this is a orchestra. I got to listen to this. I got to purchase this. And I don't like using the term classically trained, but I grew up performing. I grew up doing classical music. So from that standpoint, I was very interested in seeing how they're going to mix two genres I'm very familiar with, hip hop and orchestra or classical style music, and how they combine them and make it into, one cohesive package. So let's look at the first part of this. So we have the first LP, and as I said, this is like very premium packaging. So it is not just a sleeve. We have this actual picture of the orchestra right here. And then we actually have a full description of, the inspiration and a biography of the actual album itself. So to kind of go through it. 2 decades after the album's critically acclaimed release, Nas has teamed up with the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. to stage a symphonic rendition of Illmatic, one of the most revered albums in hip-hop history. Released in 1994, Illmatic is the seminal debut album from Nas. It has been considered one of the greatest hip-hop records of all time. The album is densely textured, deeply lyrical portrait of life in the largest public housing project in North America, the Queensbridge houses, located in New York City. It's crazy, I wrote this in the projects in New York City. Here we are in the capital of America, Washington, D.C., and a bunch of white people with strings and all that, playing this album and they feeling it, says Nas in exclusive behind-the-scenes footage captured at the concert rehearsal. The live concert, also filmed for the documentary entitled Greatest Performances, Nas Live from the Kennedy Center, Classical Hip Hop, displays the energy and nostalgia of this collaborative performance and now can be viewed on select digital platforms. In this symphonic performance of Illmatic, the combination of Nas and the orchestra reinvents the sound of his most popular songs like NY State of Mind, The World Is Yours, and It Ain't Hard to Tell, to create a classical hip hop journey. And also at the end of this also gives special thanks to people who helped contribute for this album. So when you actually look in, it is a very standard LP. Step forward. It is just a picture of Nas in what we consider classical concert attire. All right, and it's just regular standard LP. However, it does include an art book, and it shows different scenes from the actual live performance. All right, and so here we have the art book that was actually included with this, and it's like scenes from the actual live performance. Right here you have the music stand for the National Symphony Orchestra. Picture of Nas once again in formal concert attire. The orchestra on stage. Again, Nas with the orchestra right before he's about to perform. Nice aerial view of the orchestra. Some pictures of Nas performing. Pictures of bassist, who, if I'm not mistaken, is also one of the he was one of the arrangers for this. Another picture of Nas, and that's the final picture in this part of the art book. So this art book is literally just one of the art books. There's a completely other art book on the other side of the LP that correlates with the second album. So here is the other album sleeve. And then on the back of it shows the entire track listing along with the liner notes for the album. And so the other part of this, my bad, I said it was an art book, is really not an art book, it's actually a poster. And it is a really big poster. So hopefully this can show very well on camera. I might have to back up some. Yeah, very large picture again, Nas in his concert attire, and then on the reversed, more lit scene, probably backstage of that. So, as far as the kind of debate of why even bother collecting vinyl, it is like stuff like this. This is like very premium stuff. This is stuff that you can't get with a digital release, or in most cases, you can't even get this with an album. Something with this much detail, this much quality in the package itself. So yeah, you pay that premium price. I think that package was like what, $35 to $40 paying for this. But the listening experience is kind of what matters for cases like this. You get to listen to the album while looking at this gorgeous artwork, while kind of seeing the behind the scenes things that we usually don't see. And with this package, it came with a download code too. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the physical release of it with the beautiful artwork, beautiful album cover, and then you actually get the actual digital release that you can put on your players, on your computer, or whatever. So let's talk a little bit about the actual album itself. So as I said, it is a combination of classical mixed in with hip hop music. And what the arrangement does is that they take a lot of the background samples that we got so used to in an album, and the orchestra recreates those background samples in terms of the more actual samples from wind instruments or the melodic aspects of the production. That's what the orchestra takes care of. But in the production as well, you have somebody that's serving as a DJ, and they're doing the the actual like voice samples or the record scratch type stuff on there. And then on top of that, you just have that live element with live bass player and live drummer and all that. And what it creates is such a organic production. It feels very authentic hip hop, because it is authentic hip hop. It feels the strings and the orchestra itself does a wonderful job of having, honestly, great tone quality. Of course, it's the National Symphony Orchestra. Great sound quality, great tone quality, great technique and skill, while staying within a hip hop style, because they're literally taking the same, old school samples or certain parts. Like, for instance, he samples Michael Jackson's Human Nature, and you hear the orchestra playing the they're actually playing that sampled part that he used in there, but they're playing it on the live instruments. And that's why this orchestration is so skillfully done and so like accurate to the music and its samples and the flow. Another great aspect of this album is that you get a lot of Nas's kind of thinking in here. So you get asides from here and there where he's talking about inspiration of the album. Now, it's not super deep or anything like that, but he kind of goes and talks about certain elements of the album and like what he was thinking at the time. And this, as a performer, Nas does a great job of being a live performer. He's very much into it. He's playing off of crowd participation. He's playing on crowd hype. He does the standard thing where he'll cut out part of his lyrics and let the audience go along with it. And that's another cool aspect. Like, the audience in here, because this is a live performance, they get into the performance, they get into the music, because again, they're fans of Nas and of hip hop. And so, he uses that energy to really drive forward in his album. And, even things like the Genesis. The Genesis was just a strictly like instrumental track. It was basically the intro track, and it was just using a bunch of samples at the time and voice clips. But the orchestration of it, the arrangement of it from the very beginning is very symphonic. You have a lot of, flowing elements going on in it, and they take something that was just a intro track and actually expand on it and make it something very beautiful, very pointed arrangement and composition to set the tone for the rest of this album. And then everything else is pretty much like just standard to Illmatic. Obviously the songs are where they're featuring other people like AZ or God, I can't think of it right now. The samples that they have in there, obviously they're not, the other guest artists aren't in there, but it is just Nas doing it. But everything's authentic, everything is there. His energy is so hyped and it's just, he's so much very into it, and there's parts of the album where he's like very appreciative of where he's come in the industry and how he's gotten to this point. And if I'm not mistaken, this like record and this album is like very historic, because if I'm not mistaken, this was the first instance of a live hip hop performance with orchestration, or it was something around that some facts on that. I might have to fact check myself on that, but it was something regarding either the arrangement of the pieces or just the performance itself, that it was the first strictly hip hop live performance with an orchestra or a national orchestra, something like that. But yeah, it is a very high quality piece of work, very well arranged, very well put together. And if you are a record collector, you owe it to yourself to get this album, even just to listen to it. Even as a hip hop head, you need to listen to this album, because there's so much that is done extremely well. There's and it's a different sound for Illmatic. A few years ago they re-released Illmatic as a double CD with kind of some remixes on that second CD. That's fine and all, but this right here, this is just a completely different look and different experience to this album. And it is one that you definitely should not miss, and definitely that you should listen to. So yeah, that's Nas Illmatic live with the National Symphony Orchestra from the Kennedy Center. So definitely is a must buy for hip hop heads, definitely a must listen to. And for vinyl collectors, that's something that you definitely want in your collection. So once again, this has been Now Spinning. My name is Brian. You're on the channel Sound Test. If you liked it, do all the YouTube standard stuff, like, comment, subscribe, all those things. You've been rocking with me this long. Appreciate it. And I'll see y'all on the next one.